In this video, I'd like to show you how to create a virtual private cloud or a VPC in the AWS environment. If you log into your AWS console, you can either search for a VPC, select the area up here for commonly used services, or it may already be on your homepage. I'm going to click on the one that's right here. And this takes me to a dashboard for VPCs. Now, VPC stands for Virtual Private Cloud, which is a complicated sounding name for a simple idea. If you have a wireless access device in your home, then every time you get on the internet, you get assigned an IP address, and it typically is something like 192.168 and then two other numbers, or it's 10.0 something. And this is the same thing. It's a private network that exists in the cloud, and you can create as many private networks in the cloud as you want, and they can't talk to the internet unless you create some interface back and forth with your private network. Now, on this console that I just brought up right here, I'm in the Northern California region. You can see that I already have three VPCs that are already in existence. I'm going to click over here on Your VPCs because I want to find this icon, this graphic right here that says Create VPC. So let me go ahead and click on this. Okay, so whenever I create a VPC, the reason I'm doing it is that I need a place to host my network attached devices. So for example, EC2 instances are one of the most common things I'm going to launch, and every single EC2 instance I launch is going to need to have its own private address. If I don't create a custom VPC this way, then every time I launch something like an EC2 instance, it will be put into the default VPC that's already there in my account. But as you get more experience, you don't want to just use that all the time. So here I am creating a custom VPC, and here's why you might want to have a custom VPC. Imagine that you have all of your EC2 instances for a production service in one network, all of those for a testing environment in another network, and all of them for a staging environment in a different network. In this one, I'll say this is for my websites, and I'll call this production 2. So again, you might have different networks for different purposes. Maybe you have a lot of different applications, and you might isolate some of your instances to a particular network that are related to a different particular application. Now, in creating a VPC, this is pretty much all that I have to do. I just give it a name. I'm going to go with the default here. Here, however, is the one thing that you have to determine. You have to determine how big you want the network to be. And there's kind of two parts to this. So here are your private addresses. If you want, you can Google RFC 1918 and learn about the private address spaces. But among all the IPv4 addresses, these are reserved ones that can be used over and over and over again. And again, you find these on your local networks if you have a home network or a work network. Typically, your devices, your desktop computer is going to have one of these IP addresses assigned to it when it gets onto the network. And so because these are reusable ranges, we need to select one of these as the basis for our network that will be our VPC. I'm going to go ahead and select the 10.0 range. I like this one because it has one of the biggest ranges to work with. I can manipulate like I can have a 10.0 and a 10.1 and a 10.2 all for different networks. And that can be handy when I need to connect networks or VPCs after the fact. If I just go with the 172, or actually like a 192.168, I have more limitations in terms of the networks I can make and things related to making those networks talk to one another if they are separate VPCs. So let's come back over to here, and let's just say I'll do a 10.0. Now, there needs to be 4 numbers that are separated by IP addresses, and the numbers range from 0 to 255. And we put something after this address, which is called CIDR notation. And 16 is the biggest you can go. And I would recommend that in all cases that you use 16, which is the biggest you can go. You can't have more addresses or more bits, as it were, that are associated to creating your address range. This particular number right here allows you to have 65,536 unique addresses within your private network, and you can't go higher than that. You can go much smaller than that, but you'll run into problems as you try to put multiple, lots of EC2 instances or something comparable within your network. If you only have space for, let's just say, 12 devices or something in your network, then that's not very good as your success grows. So this is good enough to get started. So I'll go ahead and hit Create VPC. Okay, so immediately it gets an ID that may be important in terms of interacting with other services from time to time. Some things to note here are that there are 3 other services that this is associated with. Now notice in the form, all I did was create an IP address range right here. But there are a couple other things that have been associated with this network, even though I didn't do anything. One of these is the DHCP option set. And what this means is that when I put things into, things like EC2 instances into this address space later on, here's some information about that. This particular option set is something. What an option set does is it gives information to whatever device comes on the network. And one of the things that for example, an EC2 instance might want is it would want to know the domain name servers that are available to it. So if it needs to look up what's the IP address associated with Google or GitHub or something like that, it's going to go out to this service right here to determine the IP addresses for those things. Also, there's something here called a route table, and this has to do with where traffic's going to go within this network when a computer is when an EC2 instance in this network is trying to send traffic somewhere. The network will direct that traffic based on whatever entries are in here. And then lastly, this is called the network access control list rather. And what's in here is a limitation on what traffic can come in or go out. And this is a firewall rule. And basically by default, it's completely open. So it's letting all traffic in and all traffic out to your VPC by default, and this can be changed.